I'm Floyd. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be here. When Ted asked me if I wanted to do this, I said no. And he said, he asked me why, and I told him I didn't think I had enough sobriety, and he said that's not true. And the following day, I had reached out to my sponsor, and I said, I'm out of morbid curiosity. I said, I do not feel led to give an open talk, but I was asked, and I know you've given a couple. What's the general rule for sobriety, length of sobriety before you give an open talk? Now, I was expecting 3 to 5 years. He said, I gave mine at 6 months. He said, sounds like a great idea. Let me know when you got yours. And I thought, oh my God, what an order. I can't go through with it. But here we are. Anybody got dogs? You ever have a dog that eats something they're not supposed to, and then they're out in the back, they're trying to take a crap, and it's stuck, and they're just looking over their shoulder, and their eyes are this big, and they're shaking and going, why? That's what I feel like right now. You're welcome. Somebody had asked me earlier how I felt, and I told them I was conflicted. And I said, part of me, a big part of me, all of my insecurities, all of my fears, inadequacies, self-esteem, all of that is screaming, don't do it, let's get the hell out of here. And on the other side is my ego going, what do you mean leave? We get to talk about us for 45 minutes and they can't go anywhere. So I'm supposed to tell you what it was like, what happened, and how it is now. My story, I know there's people. First, I'm sorry. Congratulations on all the anniversaries. That was awesome. And whether it's 1 day, 5 months, 1 year, 28 years, or even greater, the cool thing is we're all sober today. We all got today. So I thought that was cool. So happy anniversary to all you guys. My story includes church, religion, spiritual program, spiritual life, spiritual malady. I don't want to offend anybody talking about God or church. I know some people have a problem with that, but I would like to share with you real quick from the big book, so I didn't make it up. They talk about that. In We Agnostic says, yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. And then again on page 49, we who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that the many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability. So I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully you'll hang in there with me, because it is an important part of my life. It's part of my story. And then finally, I have, and this one's strong for me. It says, we never apologize to anyone for depending on our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear, which is my prayer this evening, that He would demonstrate Himself through me and I will get through my fear. So anyway, they say that when you get sober, you get your emotions back. As far as I'm concerned, you can keep them. I have turned into a crier. I can't help it. I'm already starting. So I'm just going to put it out there. It's going to happen. Please, if you feel like joining me, no shame. I'll give you permission. I like to say that I do not cry like a girl or a child. They both cry openly and unashamed. Unlike me, a man, I cry ugly, awkward, and full of shame. I was raised like most guys. The big boys don't cry. Men don't cry. Keep your emotions to yourself. So when I do try to cry or have to cry, it's because I don't know what I'm doing. I love movies. Like a Quentin Tarantino movie, we're going to start kind of in the middle and then go to the forward and back. This alcoholic doesn't believe that sobriety is abstinence of alcohol. The big book calls alcohol but a symptom. We talk about the obsession of the mind for the first drink. We talk about the allergic reaction. But I think we skip out on the spiritual malady or the spiritual disease. And so before I tell you what it was like, my spiritual malady is fear, anxiety, depression, resentment, anger, blame, guilt, shame and remorse, irritability, negativity, justified anger, which is a bad one for me, and melancholy. And all of these, for me, led me to apathy. And apathy is a dangerous emotional drug. If you're not sure what apathy is or looks like, listen to people. You know, you'll hear people get angry and they'll say, I don't care, I don't give a shit, I don't give a crap, whatever, about people. But you know somewhere inside they care. You know, because they have other telltale signs that they do something. But when you have apathy, you don't care. I got to a point where I didn't care. Hey, live or die. Bye. I didn't care. I didn't like myself, and so I didn't like you. I have often said that I am an equal opportunity asshole. I hate everyone. Not so much anymore. I'm a different guy. I am in recovery. But yeah, that's where I was. And the spiritual sickness, I mean, it's on page 64 at the bottom. It says that resentments are an alcoholic's number one. Well, here, let me just read to you so I'm not making it up. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. I have been spiritually sick. I have done a lot of things to a lot of people, myself, my family, friends, strangers, it doesn't matter. That spiritual sickness, I was in a bad place. And so that made me a very toxic person. And I, to this day, I don't know how the hell I'm still married. Yeah, you're amazing. So, what it was like. I was born July 26, 1970. I was born to a very dysfunctionally abusive home. I'm the middle child of three. Because I grew up quickly, I was the center of attention, and much of it unwanted. My mom told me a story many years later. I didn't actually hear my grandma say it, so it didn't really offend me at the time. But because I was so tall, my sister was 5, I was less than 3, and I wasn't completely potty trained. My grandma thought I was retarded. She asked my mom, was I retarded? My mom was like, you let his brain catch up to his body. But because I grew up so fast, I think by the 6th grade, I was 6'4". I was over 6 foot. And then I slowed down and stopped. But growing up that fast, I was a freak, and people make fun of things they don't know or that are different. And I was tall, I was awkward, I wasn't always fat, I was just tall and skinny. I filled out, though. I was always picked on, made fun of, bullied because of my height. People, they call you names, Lurch, Frankenstein, all that crap. My favorite was, how's the weather up there? And as I got older and more tired of that, I swear to God, I wanted to start, chance of rain. There's a big chance of rain. Sometimes hail, Because of that, I got picked on a lot. People People saw me as big and dumb, big and slow. Every time I fought back, though, because I was always so much taller, not bigger, taller. And I say that because when I was in the 6th grade, I did the 6th grade twice. Not because I was dumb, but because I spent a lot of time in suspensions. I was constantly getting into trouble. And it was usually, there's a pecking order. Society has a pecking order. And in school, you had just like in regular society, you have the haves and the have-nots. And so what is a bottom feeder 7th or 8th grader to do to gain some status? Well, if they fight someone in the 6th grade that's taller than someone in the 8th grade, well, it kind of goes a long way. And so I was constantly, it was just all the time. But I didn't want to face my dad, so I got real good at forging my mom's name. I forged so many suspensions and detentions. Detention, it was funny. I mean, I can be a schemer. Detention, school got out at 2 o'clock. It is 12 and a half blocks from where our school was to our house in Detroit. And I would get out from detention at 3. I would run a block, walk a block, run a block, walk a block, all the way home. And I would get home. I would do my chores and sit down and do my homework. And my parents would pull in at 3:45. My dad worked at the GM Parts Division, parts plant in Livonia over off of Schoolcraft in Levan before they shut that down. And across the expressway on Levan was a Felician Mother House for retired nuns that my mom was a nurse's aide at. So they rode to and from work together every day, and they got home every day at 3:45. So as long as I would forge my mom's signature, made sure I got home, I got my chores done, and sit down and do my homework, and nobody knew anything, that we were good. I actually got so good at it that my brother had me forged. I would charge him. What are you going to do, right? But my dad, my dad was violent, and so when you have, it was so confusing as a kid. My dad would bully and be violent, but tell you not to bully or be violent, and pardon the term, but shit rolls downhill. So it happened to me, and it happened to my sister and brother, and everybody else. So I was in a bad place, even at an early age, man. My parents tried to get me some help at a therapist, but that didn't work. The therapist, I don't know, man, had some kind of a facial thing, and I was like, there is no way in hell I'm talking to this woman. No. And so, yeah, that never took. My first drunk. Up until then, we would sneak stuff. But my first drunk was at around this time. It was in the 6th grade. I had been sent home early for fighting. I knew I was going to get beat. I'm going to die today. So when I got home, it was your typical bungalow in Detroit, and we had an oven with cabinets above, and in that cabinet above is where they kept the booze, supposedly out of reach, unless you're taller than an adult. And I got up there, and I knew not to drink everything out of one bottle, so I was hitting oh my God, I don't even know what that was. And I passed out. I loved the feeling. I did not like puking, but even then, I had passed out on the couch. I woke up, I rolled over and puked, and when I finally came to, before my parents got home, I had cleaned it up, I sprayed it with Lysol, I did everything I could. My dad's routine was to come home from work, take a shower, and lay on the couch, and he was laying on the couch, and not even 5 minutes later, he was like, what the hell is that smell? And I said, the cat puked. And I got away with it. We're good. I learned early to lie often, and stick to that lie, no matter what. I think that later when my kids would lie, and I knew, because I knew what I would do. It's like, I know the thinking, as long as you can't prove that I'm lying, I'm not lying. And that's a bad place to be in. So over the next 6-7 years, I would sneak beers. Like I said, I could be a schemer, but I've always been a hard worker. My dad instilled that in me, and I was a safety boy, worked my way up to head safety boy. Head safety boy gets to pick who gets what routes. I took the farthest route, because I knew that the custodian for St. Hilary School in Redford kept a cold case of beer in the refrigerator in the cafeteria. And the people that had the farthest routes got out 15 minutes early to walk to that farthest route. And so because I played sports and I had a duffel bag, I'd swing by the cafeteria, grab a couple Miller Genuine drafts, and head home. I didn't even stop for didn't even control it. But I would sneak beers from my dad's stash, and it's just, I liked having a buzz even at an early age, and it just continued to go downhill. So growing up with violence, my dad would, if it wasn't just physical violence, it was verbal abuse. I hated the negative reinforcement or the negative motivation, and yet when I became a parent, you resort to what you know, and that's how I treated my kids, and it wasn't good. But I took all of that. We moved out of Detroit. Well, I guess let me back up. I was born at Botsford Hospital in Farmington. Until I was 7, we lived in Redford, and then we moved to Detroit. I had issues in Redford. I remember being first grade. We go to the bus stop. It's right in the middle. It's like an island. And the older kids are having a snowball fight. Well, then they start targeting us, the younger kids. I can't fight back. I grabbed my sister's hand, and we walked. I've always been good with directions. I knew just from taking that bus route every day where that school was. You want to know what I got in trouble for? I didn't get in trouble for taking my sister's hand and walking her to school. I got in trouble because I asked a stranger to cross us across the street, cross Plymouth Road, a 4-lane road, because we weren't allowed to cross it ourselves. What do you want me to do? You tell me I can't cross it. I need an adult. I asked an adult. That didn't go over well. I got beat with a brush for that, and I was just trying to do the right thing. So that's the kind of stuff that happened. We moved, but at that time when we lived on Kinloch, my buddy down the street, he had found his dad's porn stash. And we moved out of there when I was 7. So before 7, I had viewed pornography, and pornography and alcohol just became a reoccurring theme in my life. And both of them kind of sunk their talons in, and it's led to a lot of dysfunction. We moved out of Redford and into Detroit. I had problems there. We went to a public school for the first year, for third grade, the second half of third grade. I remember standing at the top of the stairs, and these two guys were picking on a girl. I stood up for her. We ended up in a fight. The next day, the schoolyard is gravel, and it's Detroit, so there's broken glass. And his boys, his older cousins, pinned me to a fence with a broken bottle, third grade, to my throat, and allowed their cousin to beat me up because, I dared defend this girl. So these are just, I'm just trying to set the stage for fear, anxiety, insecurity, all of this stuff. We moved from Detroit to Whitmore Lake. When you're a teenager and you have all of these feelings, and now you're moving, I have to remake friends at 16, going on 17, in a strange place, strange school. I don't know anybody. You know what I mean? And I always felt less than, unwanted, uncared for, unloved. I know, poor me. And that's a song, right? Pour Me Another. And even though I succeeded in sports, I lettered in basketball, I lettered in football, I always felt less than. And I had issues with a guy there, and because that issue turned into him and his friends. And my senior year, I had showed up to basketball practice late, a little bit late. I was the last one in the locker room. As I came out of the locker room, 2 guys came in and they jumped me, and we ended up spilling out into the gym. I ended up fracturing my hand. My mom had it, and she pressed charges, which opened up a whole can of worms of everybody defending this guy. And we ended up going to court. We all but got laughed out of court because of my size, because he was so much smaller. It wasn't right or wrong. They just laughed. I'm like, why didn't you take care of it? Here's a guy who was already on probation, like third strike, he's a problem. Instead of putting him away, they basically laughed us out of the court. which didn't set well with me. And when I finally did graduate, I ended up moving to Alabama. Things at home were just rocky as ever. My dad was my dad, and I don't want to vilify him. He did some bad stuff, but he had moments. There was some good things that happened in our lives, and there were some good traits that he instilled in me, but some very, very toxic ones that I handed down as well. My sister was pregnant with her second. My brother-in-law was at Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri, and she needed help, and that gave me an excuse to get out of the house. And what a bad move that was for me, because I was 19 going on 20. I made some friends. I ended up getting a job at a commercial glazing company, and made friends with a guy, and we partied and got in so much trouble, and I had just decided that people were not going to bully me. I drew some mental line in the sand, and it was war. It was life or death. They say that a scared person will fight you more desperately, harder and longer, more ferociously than an angry person. And because I had this toxic swirl brewing, I was always afraid. And so when it would get to that point, there would be this, I became addicted to adrenaline. I would just make myself just so afraid of what was going to happen. They wanted to hurt me. And I would tell myself, hold on. I always told myself, this is going to hurt. And before it would happen, I would just... They're not going to hit you as hard as your old man. That's no way to go through life. Anyway, so I ended up in a lot of issues. I don't know how I didn't end up in prison or in jail earlier. I ended up getting out of there a year later. Came back. I was raised in the church, grew up in the church. In my life, I've been baptized, Baptist, Nazarene, Assemblies of God. Name it. I almost went through catechism because we were going to a parochial school, but didn't. And every time they say that baptism is a public profession of faith, and that was all those times when I was going down this road. I had this path, and I was doing these things, and I wanted to be right, and so I would go to church. And I mean, I've answered a lot of altar calls, and in my life. Yeah. Thanks. Hold on a sec. What am I doing? Okay. And I've answered a lot of altar calls, and that was, I would go to church, and I knew I had this issue, and even when I came back, and I was in my teens. Late teens, early 20s. I was thinking I was 20. And so we were going to young adults. I met my wife in young adults, but before I met her, from 90 to about 98 when I met her, I was in and out of church. And I guess I learned from this program that I was doing the 3-step shuffle before I even knew what the 3-step shuffle was, right? It's the 1-step, 2-step, 3-step drink, right? Well, does this sound familiar? I knew I had these issues. I would answer the altar call, and I would call out to God to save me. I admit that I'm a sinner, that my life is unmanageable. I came to believe that a power, a Savior, greater than me could return me to sanity, turn my will and my life over to said Savior. That's the first 3 steps in the big book, only it was through church. And it would last for a short period of time. But I couldn't get rid of that toxic swirl over and over and over. And my wife had asked me recently, she said, when you were in church, was that all fake? And I said, no, it was real. Those moments were real. In fact, one of our early dates, I felt like I was called to preach. And at this time, I was strong in the Lord. And our church, I was going to the South Lyon Church, and they were sponsoring a church in Detroit, and they asked me if I would go to Detroit and give a sermon. And I did. I got to preach at a church in Detroit. That was scary and weird, and I don't know. But it was cool because when we got back and we were talking about it in the parking lot, I got my first kiss. And that was cool. I was on the mountaintop, so to speak. But, even then, I was strong in the Lord. Then I was struggling. I was drinking. I smoked a lot of pot, man. In my time, if you're struggling with knowing what addiction is, I smoked quite a bit of crack. I wasn't addicted to it. I got to a point one time sitting in a room. I lived. We called it the frat house. You had 5 bachelors, 4 rooms. I had a room in the basement. We all paid bills. We all had. It was my buddy's house, buddy's grandpa's house that he was renting to own, and we just had parties. And I was down by myself. We had partied. I was cleaning. I found my crack pipe and a rock, and I smoked that and wanted more, but I was too lazy to go get any. And so I'm scrambling trying to find some. I smoked a couple chips, some lint, piece of paper. I was like, what the hell am I doing? I broke it, threw it out, and never smoked it again. Never snorted crack or cocaine again. I never did any of that. Alcohol, though, can't get rid of it. In those times, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but alcohol and pornography went hand in hand with me. And it led to all kinds of problems and how I viewed women and how I treated women and objectified women because of this. And but it's part of my sickness. Anyway, but I would. Hold on, I gotta find out where the heck I left off. So we ended up. We had a. You talk about a whirlwind. I was doing this. I met my wife in '98. One of our first dates was with young adults Memorial Day weekend. That's in May. By June or July, she made what she didn't know, she could not have known, was the biggest mistake of her life. She told me she loved me, and she told me that she told her Aunt Leila, who had raised her, that this was the man she was going to marry. I am full of self-pity and self-loathing, and I feel unloved and all these things, right? And I latched on like a drowning victim to a dinghy, and I wasn't letting her go. And by August, she told me that. We had gone out to dinner after church one day at Olive Garden in Ann Arbor. They went to Zales because my mom needed to clean her ring or something like that. I'm looking at rings. You said you loved me and you were going to marry me. Let's do this thing. I got a ring then and proposed. And I think she just said yes because she didn't want to embarrass me in front of everybody. But we were engaged. By September, she was pregnant. And by October, we were broke up because of my spiritual malady, my sickness. No matter how good I wanted to be, I had this stuff in me swirling that I could not get rid of, didn't even know, and I was my own worst enemy. And we broke up, and she pretty much did life by herself, as she did for a long time. She did that pregnancy by herself, pretty much. I went to a couple of Lamaze trying to be supportive. February, that was 98, February 99, I was with my brother and a couple friends in a bar in Howell, drunk, angry, lonely, what you name it, and I got into a fight, and that didn't go well, and I ended up going to jail for that. I was arrested. I ended up getting sentenced to 7 months in county. I did 6 months of tether, and then 2 years of paper, and then Shortly, just be the last month, just like 2 weeks before I was supposed to be off probation, I get served for civil court. The victim sued me and the bar. And now for the next 3 years, I'm making payments, restitution, but I didn't make the payments to him. I made the payments to the Hamburg Police Department because he had his own legal issues, and I ended up paying that for him. So it's just resentment. The judge was out to get me. It was never my fault. The victim should have been held accountable. He started it. It was always somebody else. It was never me. And I got out and tried to make restitution, and I just was in a big hole. Now my family is suffering. We ended up, I got out in 2000, and we ended up getting married in 2002. And our youngest was born in 2004, and I'm trying to be a good dad. I want to be a good dad, but every time things happen, it was poor me, and I was a victim, and everybody's out to get me, and then I would be sneaking drinks, and and then I'd go back to church, and I would be a good guy, get saved, and God's going to deliver me, and we're going to do this. And then I would fall back, and it kept being this shuffle that we do in AA, the 3 steps. But it was finally, I finally heard an open talk. I love open talks, okay? I heard an open talk by a guy named Blind Dave, and this really set me free in why church didn't work. Was it God? God, why is God not powerful enough? Did God not like me enough? Is it me? Do I not have enough faith or belief? You know what I mean? What was it? Well, this guy, Blind Dave, was raised in a Christian home, decided going into middle school or high school, he decided he was going to be an atheist, and he was a ferocious atheist. And then come to find, he ends up, later in life, gets a Christian neighbor who ends up talking to him. He just verbally attacks this guy, and he describes it as this guy never balked, never blinked. He stayed patient, stayed kind. He even reached into his pocket and grabbed his Bible. He goes, "You believe that?" He had a Bible in his pocket. And everything that Dave would throw at him about being atheist, this guy countered with the Bible, and finally had beat him down. He knelt and asked for God's forgiveness and asked him into his life. And then he felt led later on. He became a deacon in the church, felt led to be a preacher, and then after being a preacher, things just crept in. And he started drinking, thought he could have one. One became two. Two became too many. And he was back on. He said he remembers preaching hungover on a Sunday. What was it that couldn't get us there? Church, and I'm not knocking church. Church can only get you so far. Church gets you to that 3rd step. What do we lack? The big book says we lack power. Power, that power greater than ourselves. And it's on page, 60. I got it. Wait a minute. I had it. Bear with me. I moved my papers around, and now I am out of order. Oh, for the love of God. Please help me. Bear with me. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the church gets me here. The problem is that's all as far as they take you. In the big book, as we go into step 4, it says, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning. I would go to church and I would do the salvation shuffle, the 3-step shuffle, but that's as far as it could get me. And they never talk to you about a house cleaning, a moral house inventory. In here it says, though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. That doesn't happen at the church. You go to the altar, you beg for forgiveness, you get salvation, you turn and walk away, you repent, and they pat you on the head, and you're off and doing your own thing. And in 6 months, you're back doing it again. Why? Because you still haven't dealt with the crap. You haven't dealt with that spiritual malady. And it wasn't until I got to AA that I could do that. I can see now God in my life, in my program, before I even got here. I had gotten so bad that I reached a point of suicide. I couldn't kill myself because my family wouldn't get any insurance money. But if I died of untreated alcoholism, that's a natural cause, you know. And I was drinking to die. I had given up. I remember praying, and my prayer, I think I just prayed because I was taught to pray, not because I even believed anymore. But I just remember praying, God, you're going to have to get me there. I can't do it. I can't quit. But being selfish and self-centered, I gave some conditions. So I need an intervention, okay? But I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to hurt anybody or myself. I'm not looking to kill anybody. I don't want to lose my job. And I don't want to get a divorce. God said, okay. And that's kind of what happened. I was drinking myself to death. And on August 1st, July 31st of 2020, I was invited to a barbecue, or it was a bonfire, and I was already a fifth in, and they're like, "Hey, we're having this bonfire. Want to come over?" Hell yeah! So I stopped and grabbed another pint on the way there, and burnt my life down from there. There was texts and phone calls, and my wife had talked. We just kind of talked about it recently. She's like, "Do you remember talking to me in the driveway?" No. I said, "Could you tell I was drunk?" She said, "No. I was blackout drunk, and I guess I wasn't slurring or anything. I was a pretty high-functioning alcoholic." That Saturday when I went out to look at my truck on my way to work, because I would get up and go to work. If you're going to play, you got to pay. And my truck looked like a crime scene. I had a Nacho Bel Grande package that was spilled open, and there's tomatoes. There was a Burrito Supreme wrapper. There was a bag, receipt, napkins. What in the hell did a raccoon get in here? You know, I don't ever remember going to Taco Bell, much less having a conversation in the driveway. But she had said, you're gonna go to rehab, or we're getting a divorce. And if you fight me on this, I'll call your boss and tell him you're driving the truck drunk. Yeah, okay. Well, again, God stepped in because I called, and they never called me back. And then my boss called me that day. If you're heading down 696 and at the Woodward exit, the Detroit Zoo is here. Across the street is a newer building called the Griffin Building. We had that contract. That was my contract. We insulated that building, but it was a shit show. And he was calling me about some material and labor issues. And after we got done discussing that, I had said to him, I said, you got a minute? And he said, why? And I said, I've been living a lie. And I just dumped everything because, it's going to come out anyway, right, if things happen. And I just thought I would jump and get ahead of that. And I confessed, and man, I didn't get fired. God again. He said, people at work call me Bubba. He calls me Gump because of Bubba Gump. He's like, Gump, I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. He says he had a family member. He goes, I don't know. She did like 100 meetings in 100 days. You go to a meeting. I said, okay. So I looked for meetings. And I went to Crossroads. Not for any other reason. God again. Then it was the closest one, and I'm lazy. We live here, and it's right there. And okay, I'll go to this meeting. And I went there, and come to find out that my soon-to-be sponsor was in that meeting. His name's Ryan, and when we were going to the Brighton Naz, I coached the rec league basketball for several years, and I ended up I was coaching his son in the fourth and fifth grade, a few years, and he saw me there, and so I went to Sunday meeting by myself. Monday he had called, and I even talked to my wife. I'm like, hey, do you remember Ryan from the Nationals? Yes, he's calling me. He left me a message. She's like, can we call him back? I'm like, no. What are you worried about? He said he saw you at Crossroads. He was at the same meeting. Oh, yeah. Okay. Like I'm hiding it from him, right? That's my first instinct. Hide, lie, deny. And he became my first sponsor, and he took me. We went to 90 meetings in 90 days, and we rode together. Sometimes I drove, sometimes he drove, and he drugged me at every meeting. And my second Monday, I didn't do it the first Monday because I was told to go to dignitaries, and because of COVID, I went to dignitaries and nobody was there. And my wife had pushed me to go to dignitaries because her cousin told her that was a good group, and no one was there. I'm like, they're not even there. This is bull crap. So I went to a different meeting. And I had picked up the sponsor that I had chose. My wife was like, no. I'm like, stop telling me my program. She's like, that is not a good fit for you. And I'm like, how do you know? She's like, I know you. She was right. I would have steamrolled that guy. And because he's a really good guy. Ryan and I could butt heads, and then we could laugh about it. My current sponsor, we didn't. Well, it's not that we didn't get along. Dignitaries, if you're unfamiliar with dignitaries, it's a feedback group, and it's not for everybody. And oh man, about 2 months in, my wife saw a post, and it was me and her cousin's husband, and we had 5 years prior had gone on just a guys' night. And it talked about smoking weed, and she was mad. And I'm like, it was 5 years ago. I'm not even doing that. And I was bent out of shape. And I told my sponsor, and he's laughing at me, and which I didn't like. And he says, well, when we get to, because when at dignitaries, if you read the how it works, you start. He goes, I want you to read how it works. I want you to share that. I'm like, fine. And I did. And I was waiting for people to agree with me, and that ain't what happened. So my sponsor, Harry, gets on. He goes, so let me get this straight. You've been running and gunning, shooting moves for the last 10, 14 years, and you're pissed because she doubts that you're honest or that you're sober and you're being honest about it. Yeah. He says, you need to shut your mouth and do the effing dishes. What? What? I was pissed. I grumbled about that the whole way home, and my sponsor laughed at me for it. But I got up for work the next day, and at this time we were separated. I had lived with my brother for about 7 months because, being the wonderful guy I am, this is how bad my spiritual malady had gotten. I think it was in 2018, 17 or 18. There was some money that had come up missing. So we start asking the kids. I asked my girls, and they straight up were like, they calm about it. They were like, no, we don't even get into that armoire or whatever. I go outside. I ask my son. He's sitting in his car, and he's drinking and smoking. The window's open. And I ask him, and automatically defensive and angry. So now I'm suspicious. So I keep pressing. And at one point, he just blurted, F you. And I think he blurted it out in the sense of, this is bullcrap. I'm not taking this. I didn't do this. You shouldn't be, you know what I mean? I didn't take it that way. And before I could register the action, it was like I teleported, man. I don't even remember moving. All I remember was I was on him. I had gone through the window. I had him by the throat. And I had purposely turned his head to angrily tell him never do that again. And I saw it. It was terror. I had scared him. Scared him to the core. He might tell you otherwise if you talk to him. But it was that look that caused my hand to let go. I can't take it back, and I'm sorry that it happened. But I had to go through that to get where I'm at now. And then the cherry on the cake was 2019. My daughter needed a ride home from work. I was half in the bag. I was already working on a fifth of Red Stag. I picked her up, and we have a habit of horsing around and verbally attacking each other. And I said something snarky, and she said something back, and I said something back. I have no idea. I was drunk. Then she punched me. Not in the face or anything, just in the arm or chest or whatever. And she can hit hard. She's strong. And I didn't react. I just ignored it, which I think made her think that she should do it a second time, and she did, and it hurt. And I had reached over and I had knocked a bag of chips or popcorn, whatever was out of her hand, and it spilled. And she had said something, and she had leaned forward to get it. And in my drunken anger, sickness, I grabbed her by the back of her head and I held her there, and I did it hard. I hurt my daughter. This is a young lady who, when she was born, even though Lisa and I weren't together, when I went to the hospital when she was born, while the nurses were tending Lisa, they let me hold her. I did it with both girls. But I grabbed her in my hand, and because of my upbringing in the church, I lifted her up. And I prayed God's protection over her and His blessing, and that He would help me be a good dad. That is not what happened. No matter how hard I wanted it to happen, no matter how much I wanted to be a good person, a good dad, I had this shit in my heart, in my spirit, and I couldn't go any farther. And but this program, I've often said that. You hear it all the time. God brought me to AA. AA brought me to God. That's true in this alcoholic's life. My relationship with God is different than the God of religion. Did God change? What changed? It's the same God. I changed. My perceptions changed. The things that I've done have changed where I'm at spiritually. Bill says the spiritual program, the spiritual life, is not a theory. It's not a suggestion. It's not a theory. It has to be lived. My alcoholism, my spiritual malady cannot be fixed by thinking it through. Yeah, chapter 6? Into action. Right? Not into my feelings, not into my thoughts. I can't outthink it. I can't outfeel it. I can't outguess it. I have to take action, and that action is a 4th step, and then a 5th step. And my 6th step, and I'm trying to make it really quick, I'm sorry. My 6th step, I was ready for 6. I just let God take, hey, you can have them. I started listing them off to him. Anger, sarcasm, you know what I mean? He said, that's good, kid. Let's work on lying. You're a liar. And while we're at it, let's work on your pornography, because we're going to get you caught in a lie about pornography, and let's see that shit show happen. And it did. And but being the alcoholic that I am, the addicted person I am, I would say that I haven't viewed any and I know some people don't have a problem with it. Okay, this alcoholic believes, and I have to believe, that if I take anything, if I put anything in my life that affects my mood, alters my mind, these are things that are bad for me. These are addictions. And whether it's cocaine, whether it's heroin, alcohol, food, or pornography. Pornography releases dopamine and all kinds of chemicals, and you can't tell me that it doesn't, and it's just as bad, if not worse. And it's worse for me because how I treated women. My 4th step in my inventory, when I did my sex inventory, I mentioned it to my sponsor, but I glossed over it because, we're guys. Well, we watch that, whatever. No. If I'm being honest and I look at, this is what I use this in that form and it's that problem. Then every time I do that, it's like taking a drink, and every time I do that, I'm cheating on my wife. I'm an adulterer, and I have to work through that. I have to be honest about that, and it hasn't been easy. Again, I have no idea why she's still married to me, but I'm blessed that she is. Our marriage has gotten substantially better, even though I am hell-bent on screwing it up. Bill calls us children of chaos, and I don't know how to live peacefully. When I have a measure of peace in my life, and I don't know what to do with that. So I will screw things up just to see the chaos happen because that's comfortable for me. It's sick. It's wrong. But that's part of my spiritual disease, man. My sickness. I don't know how to. I'm getting better at it, though. The longer I have peace, the more I like it. Although when it does get chaotic, I can thrive. 7-step, just being willing. Willingness is a big part of this program. My sponsor wanted me to do this. I didn't want to do it, but I was willing to listen to him. I was willing to do it. And as far as sponsors go, I'd asked him one time, and I'm trying to wrap this up. He said, I asked him, he goes, you haven't called me in a few days. I'm like, well, I didn't have anything going on. There's nothing wrong. He goes, why do you only call me when something's wrong? That's what you're there for. He goes, no, I want you to call me every day. I said, why? He goes, because how else am I supposed to get to know you? He goes, honestly, I gauge your willingness by you calling me every day. If you're not willing to call me every day, that's a simple suggestion. I don't think you're willing to work the steps. Oh, okay. That's all you had to say. I still don't call him every day. I try. I get caught up. But step 8, I totally botched that as much as I want. I didn't talk to my sponsor as much as I should have, and I tried to do, not 8, 9. 8, the list is essentially what comes off of my 4th step. 9, I tried to do amends without checking in first, and they went. I don't think they went well, but they went. 10, inventory. I need to get better at doing a daily inventory at night. I do daily inventories. Well, I do inventories in the moment. A lot of times it's on the road. I do a lot of driving, and not everybody follows the rules like I think they should, and I have a problem with that. But I have gotten better at going, if you're trying to pass me in the right lane and I'm in the middle, no, that's the pass lane. Well, why did I have to do that? Now they're cutting me off. Now I'm mad. And it's like, well, if you didn't do that, there wouldn't have been a problem to begin with. Thank you, God. You're right. It started with me. But I'm getting better at it. 11 is staying in that conscious contact, prayer and meditation. My wife was talking about her cousin doing the 4 agreements, and then there's the 4 absolutes. And she asked me about it. I didn't know what it was. Well, I'm blessed. She likes to listen to open talks with me, so she looks it up. And while I was listening, because I was driving, it talked about meditation. It was an exercise. I think it was a weekend retreat or something. But he was talking about this exercise. I want you to meditate. And as you meditate, I want you to write down everything that comes in mind. And then I want you to test that against is it love? Is it pure? Is it honest? Is it unselfish? I'm like, I ain't got time for that. I ain't doing that. However, dignitaries, we pray. We're supposed to, that's part of the 5 basics. I pray in the morning. Now, when I pray in the morning, prayer and meditation, prayer is asking. Meditation isn't sitting cross-legged going, It's waiting for the answer, okay? There have been times where I have prayed to check the box that I prayed and didn't wait for the answer and got in my truck and got on the road and left God sitting there in the house. It happens. I have to check myself. Why is things going so bad? Oh, yeah, I forgot God. Yeah. But when I'm meditating, trying to intentionally meditate, here, I pray God's will in my life, the power to carry it out every morning. And when I'm waiting to hear that will, I hear a lot of things. There's a lot of clatter up there, and I have to sort it out, and I have to identify is that me? Is that my ego? Is that what really God's will is? Is that honest? And I'm starting to get better at identifying my voice and God's voice. And if you struggle with that, I heard that practicing prayer is still prayer. Just try. It's no different than me talking to you right now or you talking to me. It's just trying to pray is still praying. And then I honestly, just wait. You'll hear it. There'll be an answer. You'll feel it. And then the 12 step. I guess this is part of the 12 step. I try to work the program in every aspect of my life, and then helping others. And I hope this was somewhat helpful to somebody. I have not sponsored anyone yet. I'm sure that's coming. I'm not in a big hurry. 2 reasons. 1, I'm afraid I'm going to screw somebody up. And 2, my ego can get so out of whack that I'll take credit for your success and I'll take the blame for your mistakes. And I'll be the one drinking. And I don't want that. So, yeah, that's about it. I don't want to go too long or any longer. Sorry, I went too far. So okay, I'm done.